Can I get a amen?
Amen.
Amen.
All right, that's what I'm looking for. Good evening. Welcome back to Calling All Beings. I'm your host, DJ, with just a litany, a beautiful collection of co-hosts here, starting with the co-creator of this joint from North Carolina, Money Nathan.
Hey, what's up? What's up? Good to see you guys. I'm excited about this show.
Oh, man. And as soon as I started reading Michael's background and stuff, I was like, oh, man, Nathan and Darren should both be on this interview.
This is going to be a good one. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. The next co-host is, again, one of the original gangsters, been with us since 2021 when Nathan made this damn thing, and that is A Study of UAPs, also known as Debs. Hi, Debs.
Hi. Aren't we excited to be talking about death today?
We are. What could be better than talking about horrific death followed by peace and serenity? Also, our newest co-host, the newest cabbie in the joint, who's been doing a lot of work. I feel like she's been employee of the month the last month or so with all the guests she's booked and some shows that she's hosted. That is Boston Bia.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you guys.
Good to see you too.
And as it turns out, guys, we have a guest co-host tonight. The author of Bigfoot Influencers, the guy who went to 34 Fairview before me. Party people put him together, from my man, Tim Halloran. Hi, Timothy. Are you there? You got to come off mute. Otherwise, we're going to cut your share of the earnings for this month. Where the hell is he? There you go. So,
there we go. Sorry, guys. My button was sticking. How's everyone doing this evening?
Doing well, Timothy.
I am.
Nice to meet you. How old are you today?
I am just happy and thrilled to be with this outstanding group. I don't get to do it often enough, but I'm just thrilled to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Hey, brother, we'll get you on the next Bigfoot Roundtable. You're the one who booked our special guest tonight. Mm-hmm. This gentleman right here, he wrote a book called Beyond the Construct, The Path to Spiritual Awakening. So, without any further delay, party people, put your hands together for Michael Voshell!
Hey, everybody. Thank you for having me. Very grateful to be here.
Oh, wait, there it goes.
We have an enthusiastic audience.
Yeah, there we go. I love the gong. That's my favorite new that StreamYard added. Nathan.
That's a good one. Yeah, I love it.
All right. We'll get Michael. Let's see. Should we arrange this so that Michael's in the middle, or are we good? Yeah, we'll change him with Timothy. I think that should be the thing. There we go. All right. I think that looks good.
Cool.
You're surrounded now, Michael.
Yeah, you're surrounded, mate. We've got you surrounded. So anyway, we've got a couple of our mods in the chat. Hello, everybody. Captain Jerry Jules, thank you very much for being here to moderate this thing. And if anybody, hey, hello, Dennis Sweeney is here also from Karen Reed Nation. Let us know if somebody wants to call in. We will put the banner up later on, and you can call in if you want to talk about a near-death experience, most of which people thought that joining CAB would result in something like that. Luckily, it hasn't. Money Nathan, take it away with Michael Voshell. I started reading the sample. It's great.
It is great. It hasn't happened yet. So, Michael, great to have you with us on the show. Really excited to get into this conversation. I resonated with the beginning of your book where you talked about your upbringing in the church and basically that being kind of your second home. That's kind of my background as well. I grew up in the church. My dad was a minister, and sort of was the air that I breathed at the time growing up until I went off to college, and then I went to seminary and got a seminary degree, and then left that and left it all behind for many years. And then the topic of UFOs, which you're you're familiar, we're a little bit of a UFO show, kind of brought me back into a re-enchantment of the world. So I have a suspicion that NDEs have done something similar for you, but I'd like for you, if you wouldn't mind, to give us a little bit about your background, what led you to writing this book, and what's sort of on your mind these days.
Sure. So this book exists because at a certain point I could no longer live, let's say, comfortably inside answers that were given to me by religion. So I grew up completely immersed in Christianity, where belief was expected, treated as truth, and you shouldn't question it. From a very young age, that spirituality was framed through fear, fear of hell, fear of punishment, fear of getting it wrong, fear of doubting. That fear was presented as love, as protection, as concern for my soul, and for a long time I accepted that without question because I didn't know there was another option, and as I got older, that internal tension started to grow because I realized, I'm just going to out myself right now. I realized I was gay, and the conflict became impossible to ignore at that point. I was being told that God was unconditional love, but the system I was raised in made me feel like my very existence was a problem that needed correction. So I spent years trying to reconcile those two things, and like praying hard, trying to pray the gay away, as they say, telling myself that I just didn't understand my religion yet. But fear was doing all the work, and deep down I knew it. So that real shift happened when I began searching near-death experiences. I didn't go into that research trying to dismantle my faith necessarily, but I went looking for reassurance. I really kind of expected confirmation of what I've been taught, but instead I found something very radically different. And thousands of accounts from people across, cultures, different religions and different belief systems, they were describing the same afterlife and the same common threads that happen, and it wasn't about fear or judgment or condition. It was a very unconditional love. And what stood out most, it wasn't what these people experienced, but how they changed afterward, after they had their NDE, because people came back less afraid. They came back more compassionate, less attached to religious rules, and more focused on love and understanding. And that this book became a bridge between my lived experience, my research, and my need for honesty. And it's very personal because it had to be. But it's also deeply researched because I wasn't willing to trade one, blind belief system for another. So I wrote the book, and I wish I'd done it when I was younger, and terrified of coming out. I was terrified of losing God, losing family, losing myself. In the end, it felt less like a choice, more like a responsibility to myself, and then to anyone who's ever like happened to feel trapped between fear and truth. So that's where the title of the book comes from. I mean, I realize we're living in a construct, and think of the construct as a script we've been handed to since birth. It's the societal rules, the religious rules, the religious dogmas, if you will, the fear-based programming. It tells us, we're separate, we're flawed, we're limited. We mistake this script for reality. So it's just really, it's almost like a stage play we're taught to perform. It's like the movie The Matrix. We're so immersed in this simulation that we forget who we actually are. And The turning point for my awakening was stumbling upon those near-death experiences on YouTube, online databases, and the things I heard and read about these people describing God as absolute unconditional love, no judgment, no hellfire, no, just unconditional love, and it resonated with me instantly. It's like a truth I've always known, but it's almost like I've been programmed to forget it. And I wrote this book to help people realize that they can step out of that fear-based construct and find a spirituality that's grounded in compassion and authentic truth, not control.
That's really beautiful, and it sounds really liberating as well. Well, I think you're in good company. We love to encourage folks to think outside of the construct on this show. I know we've got a lot of questions for you. I'm going to pass it over to Deb because I know she's got a burning question. I have no doubt she's ready with a quiver of
I
questions.
do my best. I mean, I'm a little bit nervous, but
No,
All
you're
good.
going to be fine. I was just going to hone in on this concept of fear switching over, because I don't think, everyone listening to this will know everything about your book yet, but maybe you could just give us a taste of how that switch happened, or I should say why that switch happened, what from reading about NDEs and listening to encounters and things like that made you feel it was more about love than fear.
well, I mean, that comes from my upbringing, because I was so ingrained in that religion. You know, the thing of hearing these, hellfire and brimstone, the preachings of the pastors that I listened to. One was my grandfather. Even he had his own church, and then like to hear that coming from family really scared me. Like that was a really tough turning point for me to get answers that can confirm, who I really am. So that was part of my journey, and it really is just like part of my journey. That's part of being in this construct is to really awaken to who you really are. So
To clarify, I mean, what about the NDEs made you feel that experience is not something to be afraid of?
well, like, okay, well, in order to answer that, I got to answer what is a near-death experience, right? A lot of them immediately think, okay, this is the brain freaking out when it's dying, and I get why that's the assumption. It sounds reasonable on the surface, but once you actually look into the experiences, and I mean really look into them, that explanation starts to fall away pretty fast. Like a near-death experience it's not a dream. It's definitely not vague. What people describe is the opposite of confusion. A lot of them say it's like the clearest, most awake they've ever felt, and that's what's interesting is that the experiences often happen when a person is clinically dead or very close to it. Their heart has already stopped. There's no breathing. Sometimes there's like a flat or near flat brain activity. From a medical standpoint, that's when consciousness should be fading out, not turning up the volume. So one of the first things that happened in a lot of these cases was an out-of-body experience, and people describe that they're floating above their body looking down at the scene. They're watching the doctors work on them. They're hearing conversations, noticing certain details and stuff. And the reason why that matters in a lot of cases, those details are later confirmed by people who were in the operating room, or so that was very compelling to me, and that really started making me think, wait a minute, something's different here. So I really had to learn what that was all about, and that was part of my research, was actually getting into how consciousness separates from the body, and what actually happens when your consciousness leaves. So I mean, I hope that answers your question, but
No, I mean, you got into what it actually is, so now the audience kind of has a sense of it. And there's there's plenty of questions. This is a fascinating topic, and I think it was Netflix did a great series on this where there were sort of young people, young kids who knew historical events that they were unlikely to have known, which kind of gets to reincarnation, which is kind of like the next step possibly after the NDE. But now that Courtney connected here, let's go with her, and then we'll get to Boston, Bia, and Tim, and myself.
Hi everybody. Sorry I'm late. I've had some Saturday hijinks here, so I'm happy to be back. Michael, I got the book. I started reading it. I'm not as far along as I'd like to be, but one of the questions that immediately like popped into my mind as I was wading into the book was, how about prophecies? In all your research, I think one of the things that really interests people the most is about people that have or undergo an NDE, and then they see some future outcome or some future predicted. Did you see any prophecies through your cases or the things that you evaluated? That was my question.
There are people that come back with those gifts, if you will, and I didn't quite get that into my book into too much detail, but I do talk about, the gifts that they receive when they come back. Like for instance, there's this guy who he wasn't an artist. He never knew how to paint or anything like that. And shortly after his NDE, he started, having these visions in his mind about what he saw during his NDE, and he started painting them. He never knew how to paint. He knew nothing about art, and all of a sudden he starts painting all these beautiful pictures. And that's just one of the things. There's another one where a guy didn't know music at all. He never studied music, never played music. And after his NDE, he started playing piano and was amazing. So, I mean, it's things like that. No prophecies as far as that goes in my book. I mean, that's not something I delved too far into, but there are those gifts that they do come back with.
The Boston Bia.
Hey, Michael. Thank you so much for being here tonight. So my question to you is, why do you think they come back like happier with more clarity? What do you think actually happens to these people with NDEs?
It's mostly when because they have a life review. This kind of a common thing, during one of the common threads of the NDE. So to speak. So when they reach the other side, it's one of the most amazing things people report, is that they call it the life review. Honestly, it's kind of hard to explain because it's not like watching a highlight reel of your life. It's more like you're stepping into a version of your life where you feel everything, and I mean everything. I mean, it's not just what you felt, but what everyone else felt in response to you. So if you hurt somebody, you just don't see it. You feel their pain, their shame, their fear, as if it were happening to you. And if you're that kind of person that, you feel the relief, the comfort, the warmth you gave them, that's, I call that the ripple effect. Every word, every little action, every tiny choice you make has consequences you can't see. And then, like a smile you gave years ago might have gone home and changed somebody's whole day, or even the way you treated their kids or what, anything. Like really, it's just that energy that keeps moving outward far beyond what you realize. And this is the part that blows a lot of people's minds. There's no judging God sitting on a throne watching you. I mean, he's not deciding if you're passing or failing, and in that light, you become your own judge, basically. you see your life with this brutal clarity. And you're stripped of all the excuses you make for yourself on earth. And yeah, that can sting a little, but you feel the truth of how you hurt people and how you could have done better. That feeling is probably where the idea of hell came from, or purgatory. It's that, but it's not punishment. It's teaching, it's healing. It's showing how connected we all are. And I believe, that's what a lot of people come back to, when they see that there's no judgment. It's life-changing. And because here's the thing, I mean, and every day we act like we're separate, like we can't hurt somebody and it won't touch us in any way, but the life review proves we can. Every time you hurt another person, a piece of your soul feels it too. And every act of love, every moment of kindness, that ripples back to you as well. That's a huge thing when you start thinking about how we live. And the best part is you don't have to die to get this lesson. You can start seeing it right now. I mean, just start noticing the small, quiet moments, because those are the things that actually matter. It's not your social status. It's not your financial status. It's the little acts, the smiling at a stranger, or letting go of an argument, that sort of thing. And I believe that's what changes people once they come back.
For Bia, it's putting that grocery cart away. Like she doesn't just leave it like right near the car. She kind of, anyway.
Always walk it back.
That's it.
Bless you for that.
Timothy Halloran, do you have a question for your brother Michael?
Oh my gosh, I've got. Hopefully, I can ask more than one before this is over. And
you will.
Here's the book, guys. I grabbed it from Michael, I guess a few weeks ago, and didn't know what I was going to get into, because I didn't, I knew a little bit about what he was writing, and it's just fascinating. I've learned so much from it. And we know what's kind of cool for this group is the commonalities in the research. You could, the challenges that you have in studying this subject are some of the same things you have with UAP research, or you have Bigfoot research. You have thousands of witnesses, and you have a lot of them are experiencing the same thing. And then you have mainstream sciences that's fighting against it. So I thought that was cool. I was like, hey, this is just like what we do every single day, in our world. But my first thing, though, Michael, I'd like you to explain for the group, the audience, maybe you can walk through what I mean, everyone has different experiences from what from all your research that I've read, but maybe some of the common things, they have, you mentioned earlier some of the floating above, but maybe if you can walk through the 5 or 6 different things that you hear a lot, and then if you could share that would be amazing.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's one of the first things that happens is, like, I guess you could call it an out of body experience. They're suddenly floating above their body, looking down at the scene. They might be watching the doctors work on them, or hearing conversations and stuff like that. And then there's another common thread that it depends on the person, but it's called, I call it the deep blackness. It's an all-enveloping blackness. But it's usually people aren't scared of it necessarily. It's just this kind of a transition period before you end up going through a tunnel, because that's the next thing you're going through. People describe going through this tunnel and ending up, seeing a light at the end of that tunnel. Very small at first, and then they shoot toward it, and that usually ends up bringing them to the other side. And once they do experience that part of it, that's when they end up getting their life review. That's usually one of the things that happens afterward. So, and then they, there's other accounts of them meeting their relatives or dead relatives, their pets even, which I have a whole chapter on. And because I love pets, I mean, I love the fact that we get to see our pets again. That's one of the cool things. But yeah, those are really the common things that they experience.
One of the things here, I'd like to get you to comment on this, and I'll get Nathan to comment on this as well. I believe people, they have near-death experience to see the truth, especially those that they may not believe in an afterlife. Once you have a second chance in life, live to the fullest and see what your heart. I think that's what she's getting at there. Would you like to comment on that, Michael and Nathan?
As far as, can you repeat that question? I'm sorry.
Basically, what she's saying in a nutshell is that those that don't believe in an afterlife, when they have this experience, they see that they have a second chance in life, and it sort of inspires them to live it to the fullest.
Absolutely. And there are atheists in this book that describe, that they've never knew anything before this. I have quite a few examples in the book too. Howard Storm is a good example. So when he had his life review, he straight up asked a question, to his guides. He was saying, what religion is the best religion then? And the clear answer was the one that brings you closest to God. So it wasn't any clear religion. I mean, it was just the authenticity of love and compassion, and those parts of religion are the truthful parts. There's other parts of religion that we can get into, but that's mostly, it happens to everybody that comes back, every single person.
What do you think, Nathan? Is it a reformative experience? Kind of like what Ruthie's getting at. Both her comments were quite similar, so I think she was restating it.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think that what we seem to see in the literature is that there's a lot of expansion. There's an expanded awareness of what is truly at the core of reality, and it's beyond the things that we have thought are so important. It is beyond the rules and the systems that we have created in this world that we've placed so much importance on, and it's sort of revealing that those things are a little bit trivial to a certain degree, that we need to not focus on the triviality of these rules and these dogmas, and focus instead on love. And love seems to be the overarching feeling that people report in these experiences. They do come back with gifts, as it was discussed earlier. It's truly a transformative experience for them. I think there is something to it, as Ruth's comment mentioned, that you get a second chance at life. You get to come back from a death experience. You're going to live that life more to the fullest, because you realize how fragile it truly is. And I think a lot of us, go through life not really thinking about that very much. In fact, I would argue we do a good job of avoiding the topic of death in our culture, and we like to sort of hide it away and pretend that it's not real. But it is very much a part of the lived experience. It's a part of who we are, and coming to grips with our mortality is a really important, I think, quality, and it actually enhances the felt sense of our purpose and place in the world. I also think that these experiences, I love that you titled your book this way, Michael, Beyond the Construct, because I really think that is it's a good way to frame the experience, because it in our mystical traditions have talked about this for centuries, right? Where there's this sort of alternate plane, alternate reality that is more real than real. In fact, a lot of common NDE experiencers, they say it felt more real than real. The colors felt more like real colors than the colors they were used to, the smells, the sights, all those kinds of things. And I think that tells us that this experience is closer to what reality truly is. And that there's a beauty in our connectedness. I love what you talked about earlier about the life review and kind of experiencing what the other person felt like as if you were them. And I've really thought about that a lot, and I think about it in many moments. But if you take that literally, that's a real thing that happens.
Yeah.
That means that at any moment in your life, from the most mundane to the most magnificent, someone else has an opportunity to live that moment with you, even though you might not be aware of it. And that's a beautiful thing. Just to think about the breadth of experience that we get a chance to enjoy through that near-death experience or through that transition into another way of looking at reality. And I think that the underlying truth being that we're truly all connected is something that we are, I think, becoming, we're re-enchanting. We're becoming more aware of that. It's something we've lost, and we're bringing that back in the 21st century. At least it seems that way to me, even though all of our technology kind of gets us focused, right here. I think we're getting more connected in a deeper sense than just the kind of scrolling and stuff that we're all so accustomed to now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, like touching on religion a little bit, if we can talk
Sure.
about that a little bit. That's one of the bigger parts of the book, because it touches on something so many of us carry, without realizing it. It's the weight of religion. A lot of people grow up with rules and guilt and fear, and the idea that if you screw up, you're doomed. That whole framework starts to fall apart when you see NDEs. I mean, what NDEs usually show again and again is the divine or God, or whatever you want to call it, the light, the source, doesn't play favorites. It's not tied to a label. You can be Christian, you can be Buddhist, atheist, Muslim, or anything else. And if you really cross over and you encounter that unconditional love, and people interpret that love through their own lens, their own cultures. Some might call it Jesus, some might call it Buddha. Some just feel it as pure light, but the experience is always the same. Love is what matters. It's not the prayers, the rituals, the exact way you're taught to worship. It's how sincere your heart is and how open you are to love and connection. That's why I talk about religion, as a human-made construct. I don't say it to attack anybody's faith. I say it because, honestly, it's true. Religion's built by humans. Texts were written, they were edited, translated, interpreted by people, living in very specific times and places, and they had their own rules. And, sometimes it was meant to guide people, but other times it was used to maintain control. And if we're honest, a lot of the fear around God and sin and judgment, that's not how the divine actually operates. That's why I talk about religion as a human-made construct. I mean, I don't say it to attack anybody's faith. So take the word sin, for example. It's loaded for most of us. I mean, we hear it immediately and we think, I'm bad, I'm broken, I'm going to hell, but originally it was just meant to miss the mark. It's like an archer missing the target. It's about learning and correcting and growing, but over centuries we turn into something terrifying, something shameful, and then we compare that to what people actually experience in the NDE. There's no judging, no God sitting on a throne or any of that. People see their lives, they clearly understand how their actions affected others, and that was basically their hell. That was their judgment. They were judging themselves the whole time. So when I talk about religion, as a map, that's what I mean. It can be useful. It gives structure, ritual, guidance, but it's not actually the destination. Spirituality is the destination. It's the direct experience of love. You know, that's what NDEs point to. That's what's consistent across every culture and religion and every time. I mean, love is the core. Everything else is just context. It's the way humans have tried to explain it. But, you know, I mean, another thing I think is important is how religion can make people feel small, you know? I mean, like I'm not enough or I'm broken. I mean, this kind of same thing with me, you know, I'm gay, I'm not worth it. Like I'm terrible. Like why am I feeling this way? Why do I have these feelings, you know? So, you know, when people ask me, do NDEs support a specific religion? The answer is no. They support sincerity, authenticity. They support love. You know, in the prayers and the rituals, the words, they're tools, and sometimes they're helpful, sometimes they're not. You know, but the journey itself is toward a direct experience. You know, that's what spirituality really is. And honestly, you know, realizing that changes everything. It takes the fear out of the equation. It really takes the weight off our shoulders and lets people breathe. You know, it's helps people feel connected to something bigger without having to follow these lists of rules, you know.
Michael, I'm curious if any of the folks that you've talked to, and by the way, Michael's book and his contact information is in the show notes, the notes for this, the description of this YouTube. It will also be in the podcast show notes as well. And I want to just comment, Valhalla, she's the official attorney of Calling All Beings. She says that she's talking about this series right here. Let me see if I can find that. I think I started, because it's Val. You got to start. Oh, there it is right there. So yeah, Nathan has seen this. It's called The Hyperion Cantos by Dan Simmons. Science fiction reflects much of what we're describing. And I think I would just throw in there one of the parallels I'm seeing right now, and maybe we could get head nods or head shakes. No, but the richness of the visuals associated with those who experience in NDE are sort of analogous to these richness of the communication people experience with NHIs. People say, oh, well, I was able to communicate, but it wasn't verbally, but I could really, it was a richer form of communication than the spoken word. And even in Bigfoot, right, Tim, there are people that have some sort of communication with Bigfoot that they feel more than, you know, words. So with all that, you know, it's interesting. There is some sort of an interesting analogy there. That notwithstanding, anybody that you've spoken with, Michael, that has experienced something that you and Nathan were taught what hell is?
Not directly, but I do talk about those in the, you know, some of the YouTube videos I watched and some of the things that I've learned off of these databases. You know, man, this is the one that scares people the most, and I get it. I grew up terrified of hell, you know, fire, brimstone, you know, the whole thing. But here's the thing. I mean, when you actually look at the NDEs, what comes up, it doesn't match the story at all. I mean, nobody's getting torched in some eternal furnace. You know, what people do experience is distressing states, I would say. But it's not punishment from God. It's literally a reflection of what's going on inside them at that point when they die. You know, if someone dies full of anger and hate and guilt or whatever, and they end up in a frequency that matches that energy, it's like your consciousness pulls you into what you're vibrating. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting, but none of them match the biblical description, which kind of leads me to believe, as someone who's not well read on the Bible, that may have been something that was written for cause, that was scripted in there,
right,
if you will.
Exactly. Yes. And I get into that in the book. You know, there's a whole chapter on hell and discussing that very thing. You know,
Is the
but
chapter called "What the Hell"? I'm just kidding.
oh yeah, that should. Oh man,
That's tough
should
try
change.
here. All right.
So DJ, back to your other thing you mentioned, and I'll speak for Michael can interject here, but I do know all the communication from reading Michael's book is all, yeah, I think for the most part all nonverbal, but there's an understanding between what they're communicating to each other.
Interesting. It's all nonverbal. Okay. Wow. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Again, that goes along with the NHIs. It's all nonverbal.
All telepathic. Yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting. Phil has a question for you here. Michael says, have anyone come back reporting the ability to dream more lucidly or develop enhanced psychic abilities?
Yes. And that was kind of the, maybe that's something we can discuss a little bit. You know, there's several people, like I said before, about, you know, getting psychic gifts, that sort of thing. But like, you know, one of the most healing realizations is that the veil it's like a screen, right? It's not really like a wall. And I mean, really, here's the thing, like for psychics, I don't have a whole lot of information on that when they come back for, you know, with different gifts and that sort of thing. But there are people who actually do come back with psychic abilities. So they can see the future and they can see, you know, they can predict things that are going to happen. That is very true. And there's a lot of stuff they're saying about 2026, by the way. It's really some wild stuff, but yeah.
It's the end of the world. Should I cue up REM? It's the end of the world as we know it. Just kidding.
Yeah, I mean they are saying it's a period of cleansing. This, and I don't, who knows what that means, but right, because they kind of get a little you know, a little sketchy with that. They don't really say exactly what's going to happen. They do say there's going to be quite a few earthquakes this year, some, you know, the usual tornadoes, high winds, that sort of thing, destruction, lots of stuff politically.
Yeah.
That I won't get into, but yeah, I mean, there is a lot of that, and it's just wild, man. It's wild that somebody comes back, you know, with that kind of ability. There was even a guy, there was a guy who passed away, and when he came back, he could see people's auras. So you could see, like when he looks at a person, he could see colors, and the colors represented their aura based on their personalities and their, you know, what state of, you know, what state they're in as far as what's in their head, what, you know, the problems they're having, directly related to those colors. And it was really strange. It was something interesting. But yeah, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of stories like that.
No, people tell me that my aura is sort of approximates to like boxed macaroni and cheese. I don't know what that means. If there's some sort of something behind that. Yeah. I don't know. I don't quite know. Well, anyway,
not sure what orange means, but I think you're good.
Take it away, Nathan.
That sounds delicious. Yeah, you know, one thing I was curious about, and I don't know if you know the answer to this. It occurred to me today. So in the UFO community, and Tim, you can probably speak to this as well in the Bigfoot community. There are often controversies, right? There are things that are controversial, and you have certain camps that, you know, I think it's this, I think it's that. Sometimes these camps can get into some pretty fierce debates. As far as I'm aware, there aren't any camps like that in the NDE community. Is that a fair assessment where there are some different takes on what these experiences are?
As far as different takes go, you mean like a hellish experience or something like that, or is it?
I mean, I guess the one that does come to mind is you've got the religious framework, that would be imposed on the NDE, and then you have, I think, what you're describing, which is kind of more of a deeper metaphysical framework that is beyond the religious sort of paradigms. So I could see you getting into sort of debates with more religious people in that regard. I've also heard, I don't know if you've come across this perspective, but it sounds like a very sort of traditionally conservative, dogmatic Christian perspective that these visions, these experiences might be trickery by the devil. I've heard that before as well, and I was wondering if you've come across that, if anyone in your research has expressed that perspective.
That's an interesting perspective, but no, I've never come across any NDEs that would say that it would be a illusion of some sort. Like I said, before, that they come back saying that it was more clear than what they see here. I mean, it's more of a clear experience there than here. So I wouldn't see why that would be something that, of course, I don't believe in Satan, so I wouldn't say, I wouldn't say it was something like that. If anything, it's their own, their own personal struggles that manifest in that other side, and that's part of the cleansing. That's part of the cleansing part of it. So no,
Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I wanted to come back to something too that just a quick other question that I wanted to get Courtney to weigh in on this, if she wouldn't mind. So Courtney, I'm correct in that some UFO experiences include experiences with the dead. Isn't that right? So there is this kind of interesting bleed over between NHI and what we would call aliens, but also the deceased.
Yeah, and they follow different lines. There's where they will see NHI in a post-death scenario. When there's a clinical death, they'll transition into almost like a medical bay where there's NHI and there's like threshold guardians, very similar to when people who don't have an NHI type NDE. So they're mixed, but they do seem to follow along certain lines. There's also in UFO lore and research, many times ancestors who have passed away show up during an NHI encounter. So it really depends. There's also experiencers who have NHI experiences that are very NDE-like, where they go into some kind of medical healing, where there's a medical healing involved. There's a lot of crossover there. So it depends on the type, but yes, there is crossover.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you.
Hi,
Terry,
man.
I'm sorry, go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah,
Please.
so there's actually a story that was told by a person who claimed that he had dealt with NHI, and he said that NHI understood death better than we did, that to them it wasn't the end, that they would continue to communicate to their dead. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that, there's a possibility that our understanding is very limited and their understanding may be greater.
You know what's funny, Deb, is what's his name now? Staff Sergeant Dan Sherman, the guy who wrote that book, like Way Above Black, when he was communicating with those NHIs on behalf of the GOV, he said that they have a higher power or believe in a higher power, and they eliminate waste. Sorry to bring that up. But they didn't talk about death, I don't think, right? I don't think there was any conversations he had with those entities about death. Do you remember?
None that I can recall from that.
Did you guys
I just wanted to
Yeah,
add
I've read it.
something if I can.
Please do. Please do. Uh-oh, did you mute yourself?
No, I
Oh.
did, because I was
Okay.
overlapping with other folks, so I stopped. I just wanted to ping back to Nathan
No,
that one of the
please.
areas that I think is the most controversial about the NHI NDE part is what you were talking about, is that people get in camps around NDEs. And so I don't think we see controversy in the NDE community per se, but I do think there is controversy in the UFO world about NDEs and what happens during that afterlife contact. So that's why I try to stay away from it, because it's so loathsome. And I also wanted to answer somebody's question in the comments that asked about synesthesia. And if people with synesthesia have more of these experiences, and yes, they do. They've been studied. There's many studies. You can find them on Google Scholar. And also, they also receive more veridical information, which means when they're in those states or having those experiences, they get more like true experiences, which means when they're in a non-ordinary state, they get something in the environment that's happening, that's true, that they wouldn't otherwise know. And that is included in NDE research as well. So I just wanted to answer that. It's a really important question.
Thank
And
you
I
for
think,
doing that.
Nathan, I don't know about the camps, and again, Michael will probably be more of an expert just from this, but I know there's skeptics in there. So I know there are, there's that, some people think that it's not an NDE. So that might be not necessarily a camp, but there's that skeptical side. And then also there's for this group, there's and Michael, I'm going to put you on the spot again with the extraterrestrial side of it, possibility.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of NDEs and spiritual research suggests the soul is far more flexible than we imagine. Because like if consciousness is fundamental and the body's temporary, then being human is just one assignment. It's one classroom, one chapter. So it's entirely possible that some of us might have lived life elsewhere, in other worlds, in other forms. Learning those lessons that simply can't be learned within the constraints of a human nervous system. So in that view, Earth isn't the whole school, it's one classroom in a massive universal campus.
Media.
It's wild. It's wild to think that we could possibly have been reincarnated at some point as alien life.
Tyler Henry talked about that.
Really?
He's talked about that, how, he's been asked about that, of course. And he said that not everything he connects to is human, and not every person that he speaks to has always been human. So
let's get the cabbies to tackle this, and then
Brian Weiss too.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Brian Weiss too, the doctor, the MD.
Oh, really?
Who did hypnosis in many lives, many masters. Very similar people who had ET lifetimes before. Just backing up what Deb said.
Thank you. And thank you, Ruthie. We appreciate that. And one of our members, Terry, we got a whole bunch of members that are members of the CAB YouTube group here today. And by the way, let me throw this out there. If you guys are members and you want to be on a members roundtable that we will broadcast live, we can have you all on screen as an avatar, or you can show your face if you want. We can also have a backstage pass. So in other words, we will have the studio up and running. It won't be live, but you can come backstage and hang out and talk with us. Some of those are hilariously funny, especially when Bia is making fun of James. It's really funny. And James Jackson, for those of you who know James Jackson. So anyway, I'm just kidding. So Terry's asking, and I'd like you to start with Courtney. Let's go to Deb, Nathan, and then, Bia can take a shot at this. Isn't it all energy at the end? It's a very open-ended question, so take that where you want to go, Court.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could certainly interpret it that way. Humans have a way of making things very complex, and consciousness is very much a part of this conversation. So I think, what is consciousness, right? And where does consciousness go? And how are these experiences able to happen, right? That seem non-ordinary or outside of the body. And so what is that essence? I think my own opinion is that we have a soul. And so is the soul energy
there are many ancient wisdom traditions that talk about it, and Vedic traditions, and the and the breath and the life translates into energy. So yeah, I can get down with that.
Dig it. Debs.
I'm laughing. Of course, I'm going to mention the electromagnetic spectrum. Of course, I am. I think everything's
I love it.
And I think even brain waves technically are on that spectrum. So I think that's something to it. I've delved into other ideas circling around this, and everything on our planet that lives has DNA, and that doesn't mean that everything on our planet has consciousness. There's an indication of some intelligence, but there is a difference. So I think there's something that indicates we all have energy, of course, but that consciousness might be something a little bit above. So,
Nathan.
Yeah, I think it is. I think with our scientific pursuit, we've sort of learned now that you get smaller and smaller and smaller, there really aren't particles. There aren't little tiny billiard balls at the foundation of reality. It's all sort of excitations of energy and expressions of energy. And so what we think of as solid objects, that it's just a tight configuration of energy there that the universe is presenting to ourselves. So it's truly, truly fascinating. I think NDEs like UFOs, like psychic ability. I know somebody mentioned in the chat the telepathy tapes. There's so many different on ramps to I think what this gets to, this deeper reality that we're all connected, that consciousness is fundamental, that when I talked about earlier in the chat, energetic configuration, that's you're an energetic configuration. What makes Nathan and DJ is this expression of energy, and we can sort of maintain that and hold that really strongly into these NDEs experiences, so much so that we have this very strong sense of self. But I think what the NDEs seem to point to is that you're more than just what you think you are, that there's even more to it than that, and that we all are, in fact, part of a larger whole. We're just experiencing that whole from different perspectives. So yeah, I really resonate, to use a word that I think goes well with that statement, resonate with the energy perspective.
Yeah, and for my part, when we talk about energy, like in concert with, like, you see Skinwalker Ranch, they're measuring the 1.6 gigahertz, and when with Bigfoot, I mean, we had recently had Sybilla Irwin on, and she told me that when they went to the site in Texas, every single battery that they brought was drained to zero. Then we had on Chase Klutsky, right? And she said she went out to that professional baseball player's house where he was having UFO experiences. All her batteries were dead. But that is really, when we're using these, that's just a measurement. We're trying to use science to measure something, that energy that's maybe only partially scientific, right? There could be a component of it that isn't necessarily scientific. So yeah, what you say there, whether we're talking about we're at a house where there's ghosts, whether we're, and Deb, in her very, very short-lived ghost hunting career, which lasted one bathroom encounter in Baltimore. And then just kidding, Debs, I love that one. And then UFOs, Bigfoot, ghosts, so forth, and then consciousness. And then they talked about that the body, even, that they can sense when a soul has left the body, there's an electrical energy and even perhaps a little bit of mass. But we're talking about using science to measure something that we certainly can't completely measure with instrumentation. So isn't all energy, Terry? Yeah, I think it is to some degree. Bia, did you want to weigh in on that? Do you have any thoughts on that one?
Well, I was going to mention, as someone who has watched close people to me pass away, I think there is a sense of energy and light that goes away when somebody goes to the other side. So I do think we are there. There's definitely energy and light that we all have.
Oh, you and Deb should be going out having a Nescafe right now after that one. We we've got some questions here in the chat I'd like to get to. So let me get to the top here. This one right here, the reason I'm going to bring this one up, this is a one-word one from Cinnamon 483 that says psychedelics. And Michael, there is a series on Netflix, and it deals with Navy SEALs that are trying to recover from PTSD. And they are very unsuccessful in using medications and drugs to recover. So they go down to Mexico where they, do you know what those things are they give them? They give them some sort of an organic something that they drink or eat. And next thing you know, they're in a
Ayahuasca.
Oh, ayahuasca.
it could be that. Yeah. It's something that they can't do in the United States, but they enter a realm that seems to me like they're having an NDE. And when they come out of it, every one of them felt better. And even then they took another group of veterans down there to use whatever these, I know that Joe Rogan talks about this stuff all the time. Is it DMT? I don't know. But anyway, so it's interesting. Psychedelics. Have you spoken with anybody that's had an experience analogous to psychedelics, but it was an NDE, or spoken with someone who's, it was psychedelics, but it was like an NDE?
Yeah. Well, there's this guy I talk about in my book. His name's Jonas Rosen. He actually has a YouTube channel, and he experimented with DMT, which he kind of has these. He basically guides people through this. It's kind of like I don't know how legal this is or anything like that, but I kind of think of like this. I think of it like this because he tells it in such a profound way, because he was saying in one of his videos, psychedelics actually changed his life because he actually had an NDE through his psychedelics. And he's an atheist. He doesn't believe in anything, outside of what's here, but he did experience something that actually changed his perspective. I think psychedelics, they pry that door open a little bit. Near-death experiences, those kick the door off the hinges. I mean, what people describe on that other side of the door is wild.
It was. Watch this on Netflix. It's amazing, man.
Yeah.
Wildly different, but their life experience and the trauma, sometimes as a child or a kid, informed what that experience was, and maybe had nothing to do with their wartime experience.
Right.
I have to say, sometimes when people are having an experience with DMT or ayahuasca, they're pretty much almost killing themselves. So for them to get through that gateway near to an NDE is not all that surprising to me. Like their body probably does think that it's going to die in some cases. But the biggest indicator, the biggest difference is that when someone has an NDE, they're able to see things in other rooms accurately and describe them. And sometimes they meet people on the other side that they didn't even know about and come back and have validation. So unfortunately with the DMT experience, that doesn't really happen. But they definitely have some interesting patterns of their own.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, like this guy, he described it like a dream or a hallucination, but he described it like he was entering another domain of reality, which is, could be touching that other dimension of the afterlife while doing that. I mean,
like Jim Morrison said, we break on through to the other side, man.
Yeah.
I love that song. You know what? Let's get Michael in on this, and then anyone else on the panel that wants to give an opinion on this question from Donnie Knott Wahlberg, which is, I've been told that it may be possible to bring back negative spirits with you. Is this true? Question mark.
I have never heard of that, really. I mean, there is a shadow side of the construct. There are evil and dark energies, but I mean, I've never heard of anybody actually bringing something back like that, because I mean, we've already discussed where they come back feeling changed in a positive way. You know, nothing like evil happening there. You know what I mean? Like they're not bringing any evil people back with them, but those people are kind of. I think this what happens is they get trapped in this. You know, it's like a shadow that only exists because something is blocking the light. You know, I mean, we perceive those dark entities are often just like a collection of human fear and hatred and greed that have taken on a life of their own, you know, within the construct, and that we feed these shadows every time we choose judgment over empathy or fear or love.
Yeah, I was going to say what we have heard about this, and anybody else on the panel can tackle this, is Skinwalker Ranch. That when they've gone out there, they've encountered entities that were not necessarily negative that came home with them, and there's probably, I think we could probably think of half a dozen visitors or researchers at that ranch that have had that happen. Anyone else want to tackle this one? Any thoughts? No?
Can I just tie the last two things together?
Please.
Okay, so the last question was about psychedelics and ayahuasca. And so ayahuasca was huge, right? Like 10 years ago in New York, all these people were seeking out shamans and doing ayahuasca in hotel rooms in New York City. So I just wanted to say to everybody who's listening that medicine has changed and is changing as it's becoming more available to different types of populations. So I just wanted to say, be careful with it. You know, I just read a huge article on it by somebody who provides the ayahuasca trainings and trips. And they said that they've had a few people that they lost after they went and did the ayahuasca and came back with like existential sadness and other things. So I just wanted to put out a cautionary tone on ayahuasca and how the medicine is changing. But I also wanted to say that, you know, I think my perspective might be a little different here, not necessarily on NDEs, but having done some spiritual training, right, where you're an apprentice and you train as an actual healer, I think that you can bring entities. So I didn't used to believe that, but I kind of changed my mind as I went through spiritual training for a few years with a teacher, that especially doing shamanic work or ayahuasca or any kind of journey like that, like a vision quest or using any type of medicine to go under, you know, under a journey type experience, I do believe that you can, you know, in those different realms, bring things back with you. So that was my other cautionary, like make sure you go with a capable guide if you're doing those kind of experiences. That's all.
We have no shortage of cautionary tales here. This
I-
one,
Can
I
I
love it.
add something to this?
Yes, please do, ma'am.
This kind of ties into the earlier discussion of hell because we're talking about evil spirits. And my understanding that some NDEs, when people are trapped in an unpleasant place, it's because they aren't really elevated yet. They haven't realized that where they are. They haven't really so like people who talk about this, like, and I hate to use the term new age, but that is like what comes to mind in the new agey way. They understand that there's like levels of density and this gateway that people are accessing with ayahuasca and things like that. That's a lower level probably. So that'd be more likely a place where something like that might come back. And if you reach an even higher level, that's usually through something like meditation. And people who meditate probably don't have any of those lower level experiences when they go on the other side, honestly, like because that's how people think about it. There's different levels of density. So if someone's near the gateway, yeah, sure, they might be able to bring something back, but I don't think they're going to bring it back if they go all the way to the other side.
Well, Nathan could certainly ask EXO because they talk about, I think he meditates fairly regularly. Perhaps let's, for Bia's amiga, Ruthie Robles, let's get Michael and then Nathan to tackle this one. I know as a Christian, I was raised to believe hell is fire and lava. But personally, I think hell is your own personal fear. used as torture or trauma, and demons in hell will be your tortures. Can you react to that, Michael, and then Nathan?
Yeah. Well, I do have a whole chat. Like I said, I do have a whole chapter on this. So
What the hell it's called?
yeah, it's called What the Hell? No. Man, like there's a lot of things where it's framed as, you know, especially in the Bible, a lot of religious doctrine. You kind of have to take it for what it is like, you know, it is written by human beings. It's not written by some God in the sky that threw a book down from the heavens and is like, here you go, guys, here's how you're supposed to live, right? So I mean, in that sense, you know, it's hard for me, and you know, I kind of go through this in the book too, where it's you know, I mean, this is difficult for me to say, but there are no demons. I know that. According to NDEers, they don't see demons. They only see like these forms of people, basically, who are struggling. And you know, I mean, there's a whole idea of evil. People love this idea that evil is some outside force. It's some entity out to get you or whatever. But I mean, Satan and hell are really interesting because they're really human inventions. If you look at the history, Satan literally started as a word that just meant adversary. You know, over time, that concept got twisted, dramatized, and then painted as a scary villain to scare people into obedience. You know, hell started out as a metaphor too, and then over centuries, it got literalized, and people cling to these ideas because fear is a powerful way to control behavior, to keep societies in order, and it works. I mean, teach somebody that evil is lurking, and they can be punished forever, and they're going to follow the rules, right? But NDEers, they don't see Satan taking souls. I mean, they see light. They see lost souls wandering, you know, hurting, stuck in their own patterns, but always with the possibility of turning toward love. So, I mean, even the darkest experiences have a door to the light. And that's why I love this stuff. It changes the whole lens, you know. Morality isn't about fear or punishment. It's about growing, waking up, and learning how to love. And that's life-changing. I mean, you realize that the fear, the shame, you know, all these horror stories are human constructs too. They're tools. It's not the ultimate truth. And honestly, when I first saw this, it hits me hard. I mean, growing up gay, all the stories about being bad or condemned, you know, that weighed on me really a lot. And learning that those teachings don't reflect a bigger reality, it's liberating, you know.
I love to hear that. I love to hear that, because nobody should live their life and feel like that just their state of being is wrong. You know,
Right.
like that's crazy.
Yeah,
Nathan, you want to
just
take
just being who you are, really. I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
and you know, I go over identity a lot in the book, and that's very personal to me as well. So, you know, we can go over identity if you like, but it's quite phenomenal what I found as far as the you know, as far as the answers to that.
Yeah, let me let Nathan take a stab at this one, and we got about 15 minutes left, so we're going to try to make these quick hitters. But go ahead, Nathan.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick, and I won't add to what Michael said, 'cause I think he touched on a lot of really good things. But I think that you know, it's so important why the takeaway message from the NDE is love. Love is not a container. It's not there to trap someone. And you can often find people who believe that they're practicing love, but they are in fact trapped by another's behavior, and they call it love, but it is actually a confinement. True love is liberation, right? And this is what we see in the NDE experience, and it's why it's so important to practice love to those who you meet, because so many people are trapped by fear and by the kinds of things that Michael touched on in the religious dogma, and they're wrestling with that demon for so many years. I mean, just decades. They're wrestling with those kinds of things, the sort of box that they've been put in. And if you meet that person with love, you can unlock that box and free them from that confinement. I truly believe that. So I don't want to, you know, add to the kind of religiosity to it. I agree with everything with everything that Michael said. There's another path, and I think that love is that path.
What the Duck, thank you very much for gifting 5 Calling All Beings memberships. That is so awesome of you. Here, What the Duck is asking, I'm interested to know if there's anyone who's reported these experiences has been religious in general. Has been okay. Is it a religious experience? Correct me if you think I'm wrong here, What the Duck, but is it a religious experience, Michael, in general, or is it devoid of religiosity and very just experiential, very vivid, very visceral?
It's completely devoid of religion.
Okay.
Completely devoid of religion. And that's the thing. I mean, like I speak of atheists actually, you know, passing on to the other side. And, you know, there are religious aspects. Obviously, there are people who go to the other side and they meet Jesus, or they meet Buddha, or they meet Krishna. And it really depends on what their religion is. And it's really funny because it kind of makes you wonder if this source manifests itself to comfort someone who is in a religion, just to kind of ease them through the process. So that's kind of my take on it. You know, I don't hear of a lot of people coming back and preaching hellfire and brimstone. That's for sure. You know, I mean, all they come back to is love. Ultimately, that's it. They preach love and kindness and compassion and empathy, and they come back forever changed. A lot of these people. I mean, you really talk about. I mean, you really hear about their stories. 99% of these people come back changed. You know, and that's a huge thing.
You know, we've covered this one on Cab before, and I know that Jesse Michaels. Is everybody here familiar with Jesse Michaels from American Alchemy? He was on Joe Rogan recently. Tim, I don't know if you're familiar with Jesse, but he is probably one of the best, most knowledgeable. He's just like knowledgeable on so many different topics. Nathan. It's ridiculous, but one of the things that he said is, he said, what is it? He says, when he's talked to people from the Pentagon that says that NHI are demonic, and then he says, but then your next question is, what's a demon? So do you have any comment on that? And we can go all the way around the panel with this one.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you've heard about this a lot. There are sort of factions within the government that study the UFO phenomenon, that believe it is demonic, that have a strong religious framework they've applied to the UFO phenomenon, and tell people not to pursue it because it's sort of like getting in bed with Satan, you know, the demonic forces, that kind of thing. I think that's an outdated take. I think it's like a legacy take of mid-20th century evangelical Christianity that has an imprint on the folks who happen to be in those circles. I don't have a whole lot more to say to it than that. I think it's just an incorrect interpretation. I do think but I would say this, there, you know, to Courtney's point, you know, there are, you know, spiritual hygiene is a thing, and we don't use that phrase maybe on the show just yet, but it's important that you practice, you know, sort of a right state of mind, and you know, be careful what you play around with, right? Because you might think it's all fun and games trying to summon a UFO, or, you know, summon a certain kind of experience, but you might be inviting a negative energy that you're not really mentally prepared to deal with. It's very real. These sort of downstream consequences if you aren't thinking through your actions. But I think that ultimate source of that negative energy is really truly yourself, and other negative energies that kind of coexist with us.
Interesting. So it's derived from oneself.
Well, ultimately, all is derived from the self, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of agree with that because, like, I mean, a demon is a symbolic uh, manifestation of fear, fragmentation, unresolved, shadow within consciousness. In other words, like, ego distortion externalized, fear given form. When people encounter demons in altered states, or even in NDEs, they're usually encountering aspects of consciousness, and not it's not necessarily an external evil entity. Demons show up most often when somebody's terrified, or somebody believes deeply in them, or somebody's losing control. That's it's really, those hellish encounters almost always resolve the moment the person lets go and that fear dissolves. And that's the whole thing with the NDEs. There's always that arc of coming back to love, and the whole environment shifts, and love or calm replaces that. So that alone tells you these experiences are state dependent. They're not really external or eternal destinations run by demons, demonic wardens, or whatever you want to call it.
Deb's demons.
Oh, I have a lot to say about this, DJ. Pretty prepared.
Let's truncate it. All right, go ahead.
I will try. So,
All right.
first of all, if you do try to do research on Satan, there's about 15 different Satans, and they're all being compounded together. And that's a big misunderstanding. It's actually many different entities that are being connected as Satan. The concept of the jinn, for instance, which is considered to be demonic by many people, if you ask someone who is Muslim about the jinn, that is not what they are. If you look into the history of demons, they were actually gods. So we have a great misunderstanding of our understanding of evil in general. I think it's better to go with what Nathan said and say negative forces rather than evil or demonic. I don't even think necessarily that humans are evil. I think every single human has good and bad in them. But I just think that our concepts are very much created by society of what's going on. So
I love it. That was very well done. And this is such an interesting topic. Let's go Courtney, Boston Bia, Tim, and then I'll go. But first, Courtney has to unmute.
Yeah, my dog Humphrey's here. Giving
Hi,
me some,
Humphrey.
like,
How are
be
you?
attentive to me. Yeah, so I do think that just, this is a well-covered ground, and it is the like hot button issue in UFOs right now. Angels, demons, and the hierarchy, and how these beings are all descendant from, God's source. So I'm going to steer away from that, just because I think there's so much literature. And when I think about trauma-informed practices for vulnerable people who want to heal, right? I'm framing it that way in terms of the negative and in terms of our traumas from our past, right? One of the things that I found that I thought was really interesting in that researching, doing trauma-informed yoga therapy, was that people who have had experienced trauma, when you do actually do meditative practices with them, one of the things that happens sometimes is the negative side of meditation is they reimagine. It's called reimagining that negative experience, whatever it was, from a time in their life where they experience adversity or trauma. So I think about it in this way, more like of a physical mind-body connection and how we deal with that. And so there are ways to deal with those negative aspects of trauma, like imagining or revisiting those painful places in our life and get through them. So that's kind of how I think about all of this, in terms of our own process, and how meditation can be super powerful, but it's being aware of what's being triggered and how to deal with that perception yourself, to work through those things and move through them and heal them. And you can do it, but you can also do it with the teacher. So that's kind of how I look at the demon the demonology, like within. You can work through it.
We're getting really interesting takes that are not entirely the same, so it's really cool. And for Bia, let's start with, I don't practice Santeria. I don't got no crystal ball. Go ahead.
But okay, never mind. Well, so it got me thinking something that was said earlier, because I think I've always being brought up Catholic, there's, you either go to heaven or hell, and it's one or the other. But then somebody brought up that it's kind of being used as a tool to kind of control our actions. And that kind of got me thinking outside the box. So I guess it's more of I feel like I had, it was like a light bulb went off when I heard that, because I think what I can consider to be bad, you may not consider to be bad, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to hell for thinking. So I think, I don't know. That's all I have to say. I think there's definitely more work to be, or more research to be done on this topic.
I think it really comes down to your excessive love of avocados. I think that's where we're really finding. I'm just anyway. All right.
Disclaimer.
I want to say one thing about the chat tonight. This chat is very, very emblematic of a cab chat. There's so much love and positivity in the chat tonight, and that's what makes us extremely proud that you guys are fans or viewers or followers of cab. So thank you very much. It's brilliant. Tim, Demons, do you have any thoughts there?
A few. So I think we've, over history, has been used, as been mentioned by the group here, that as a symbol. I think when we consider the terms good and bad, or good and evil, there's a kind of subjective terms. I mean, my good may not be your good, and my evil may not be your evil. So everyone may have different gauges of that. So I just think it's a symbol. I think we should consider just kindness and love. I think that's what we lead with, and that's not subjective. If we're kind and loving, but fear, yeah. Again, I think it's, if maybe we're all souls. Our souls are on these journeys, and not to talk about it here, but Michael touches base on this in the book too. But maybe our souls are on a journey. So if there's incarnation involved in this, what these NDEs are seeing, and is that our souls were on this path. So where we are right here in this moment is kind of going through school, and then we're learning as we go, and then the next life, or the next thing, we're going to continue on till we get to where we want to get, I guess. And if that makes sense to the group.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, can I say one thing?
Please, yes, please.
I mean, reincarnation is a huge piece of this puzzle, because it explains why we're here at all. I mean, if we only live once, then a lot of the suffering in the world feels cruel and random. I mean, like, when you start looking at life as something we do many times, it starts feeling more like Tim said, a classroom, and yes, it's hard, it's brutal, but that's on purpose. That's part of the design of this construct. And one of the ideas that comes up again and again, is that we don't just drop into life by accident. Before we're born, there's kind of a planning that happens. We agree to certain experiences, certain relationships, certain challenges. And it's not because we want to suffer, but it's because we want to grow. It's like the soul looks at what it still needs to learn and says, okay, this life will give me a chance to work on that. That's what people mean when they talk about soul contracts. It's not some rigid script where every detail is locked in. It's more like agreements, like, I'll be your parent, or I'll be the person who breaks your heart, or I'll be the person who pushes you to find this strength in you. And that's the wild part, is that people who hurt us the most in life may actually be the ones helping us most on a soul level. And not because the pain is good, but because of what it teaches us. That raises like a big obvious question. It's like, why would you agree to something that's hard? because from that perspective, this life is temporary. You know, the soul knows it will survive, and the soul knows the pain won't last forever. What matters is what comes out of it. You know, compassion, courage, empathy, forgiveness. Those are things you can learn in a place where everything's easy. You know, but I think here's the catch. I mean, to really learn those lessons, we have to forget that we chose them. You know, that's where the veil of forgetting comes in. You know, if you remember your soul plan, if you knew exactly why everything was happening, it wouldn't work. You wouldn't feel it deeply enough, and you wouldn't struggle. You wouldn't grow. The emotions would be watered down. So we come in blind and we forget who we were before, but we forget that those agreements, we made because you know, it's very personal and very intense, and that's the point.
Yeah, I'm thinking of one final question for the panel here. And before I do, I just want to address in terms of what a demon is. As Jesse stated, we don't necessarily know what it is, but there does seem to be, I think, tagging on to what Nathan said, you can allow that energy into you and take you over. And that's kind of like where somebody, you know, your exorcisms come in, is where you sort of open the door. At least that's what I think I agree with the religious, you know, at least the Catholic teachings on this. You can sort of open the door to a negative energy that can take it over. What Terry's saying, and I want to thank you also for the 10 there, Terry. It's very, very kind of you. Let's see if I can find her. There she is. Terry's, I think she's one of our newer members, but thank you very much for the 10. And I think that like when you send a tweet and you kind of send out a tweet that's going to be negative, or it could be a Facebook post, or, you know, respond to somebody on Instagram, whatever your social media choice is, and you kind of know that you're taking a dig at that person. And they talk about that being some sort of a dopamine hit. And what Deb said really, really resonates with me about that. There's good and sort of bad in all of us. And it's just being more on one side than the other. And I think that's the struggle in for most of us. And it's easier for some than others, because some of us have proclivities that may be a little bit more acidic to others around us, or people that we interact with either online or in person. And some of us have less of those proclivities. But I think that battle is what it's all about, and not leaning into that side of us that would upset somebody else, or that is a kind of a jab or a joust at somebody else. We've talked about this for years on Cab. So with that, let's start with Nathan, and we're going to finish with Michael on this one. So we'll go around the horn. Do you look at death and the specter of death differently than you did in your 20s, and how do you process it now? Thank you very much, Phil. It's very kind of you. Namaste. Go ahead, Nathan.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think it's you live enough life with enough experience, you start coming to grips with your mortality more and more. I'm reminded there's a specific meditation on death that I think is helpful, and I try to think about this, and that's think about your own death. You know, really meditate on your dying, and by doing that, you sort of take away its power over you. And I love that Michael, kind of his last comment really took this in the direction I think that it needs to go, and that's, you know, we're all in this sort of mix together. I'm glad that we're in this class together, and it's truly a beautiful thing. And what NDEs, you know, death is in the term, but I think it's not that it's teaching us about death. It's just teaching us that we don't really understand life and what life is really about. And so I do think about death more, but I focus more on what does it truly mean to be alive, and what is true living. I think if you start exploring those concepts, the distinction starts to drop away. Like this sort of demarcation between life and death becomes a lot more blurry. And I think that's a good way to think about it. Doesn't mean it's not scary. I think it's okay to feel scared about death, right? It's just it's an unknown to a certain degree, but there are a lot of things in life we don't understand and don't know, but we take those journeys anyway. You can't prepare for having a child, and when they show up, you have to start changing diapers. You can't really read a manual and take care of a child, so you can't prepare for death. You just have to move right into it and embrace it.
I love that one. Go for it, Debs, please.
Well, I read Raymond Moody when I was very young, before I was even 20. I understood these concepts at a pretty early age, and I've spent most of my life wondering what my plan was when I came here, so that was always my perspective in trying to understand. I have no discomfort about going to the other side at all. In fact, I actually have a perspective that, because I do sense there's a greater power. I do not know what that power is. I do sense that greater power has us do these experiences so that greater power can be a greater power. So that's the whole point, for all that learning to come back home, if that makes sense. And anything that people might perceive as evil is probably just being used as a tool for that as well.
Yeah, the biggest motivators: fear, love, and hate. Court, how do you process death now that might be different when you were younger, in your 20s, which was just a couple years ago?
You're so funny. You're so funny. um, when I was young, I had a lot of death, more death than I would say most at a young age, traumatic deaths, violent death. And so I was very much shaped by it in my formative years. And I think my education in psychology kind of trained me to understand how fear of death guides our decisions. I read this great, I had to, he's a psychotherapist. His name is Irvin Yalom. And the title of the book is Love's Executioner. So I had to read that. And he talked about his practice and how so many people, because of their fear of death, make all these crazy decisions, but they don't know it. It's a subconscious thing. So I think what changed my whole perspective, because I didn't believe in an afterlife, was that after I had a family relative, not my immediate family, but by marriage, a grandmother die, she and my uncle, who died when I was very young, came through a dream and contacted me and gave me information. And I didn't think that was possible, to have a visitation from the afterlife. And my uncle had been dead for 15 years. And the information he gave me was very specific for my cousin, Mame. So that changed my whole ideology around death. And I started to believe in an afterlife. And so I've been, ever since that dream of him giving me that information, I've been trying to understand it ever since. And so, yes, I've radically changed from fear of it to being shaped by it, to being understand how our fear of death, creates our decisions at a subconscious level, to now being totally open to the possibility of our consciousness going on and living in an afterlife. So yeah, it's completely evolved from, death by trauma to now seeing it as more of a passing. And now with death doulas out in the world, I think that the community at large is also allowing for this change, to allow people to pass. And, I think it's changing worldwide, our opinion about death. So that's my feeling. Yeah.
Bravo, my dear Cabby. So Captain Jerry Harris, she's one of our newer mods, and I thought this would be a great moment because a lot of our fans that are in the chat right now are from true crime, so they don't know that Nathan is one of the he's a co-host, he's the co-creator, and Deb is one of the originals, and then Courtney came on after Deb, and now B is the latest. So us here you're seeing as cabbies, whereas our guest, and Tim is a guest co-host who's been on with us several times, and so our only true guest here is Michael. So just so you kind of know the lineup, and Tim's helped us out a lot with Bigfoot a lot of the guests we wouldn't have gotten. The Bigfoot guests like Dr. Meldrum are a direct result of Tim, actually. So just so you know, those of you who are a little bit newer to cab, these are kind of the original cabbies, because I know you all know Bia and myself from True Crime. All right, that in mind, Bia, Death, do you look at it any differently than you did in your 20s, which was only a couple of years ago?
I wish. Yes, absolutely. As I mentioned previously, I had a brother that passed away when I was 32. He was only 5 years older than me at 37. So I found myself, that whole unexplained why so young. And then I compare that to just a couple of years ago when I lost my mom at 85. How come, one got to live to 85 and one got to live to 37? It just didn't seem fair. But what I've also too, Courtney, have had dreams, vivid dreams, conversations with my brother, and only a few with my mom. And I think what I've come to realize is that my brother had unfinished business that he needed to communicate to me, whereas my mom, her time in her conversations had already taken place with me. So her conversations have only been minimal compared to when my brother passed away. So I think I just feel that, we are here for a short time, whatever that short time is. And once you've accomplished everything you came to accomplish, and that's when it's your time to go live a beautiful life somewhere else. So there's that.
Which is what's beautiful. It's what Michael's talking about, is that there may be this beautiful sort of existence that you could have that's more spiritual than physical, but it seems to have all the physical elements. When talked about seeing your dogs and seeing people in their best health, I found that very intriguing. Tim, do you look at death any differently? Because I think, your 20s for you is like 5 years ago, right?
I was actually surprised you even made that comment to me. I think so. I think probably most of us here have experienced death at an early age to a close family member, parent. So I think it always impacts you. And sometimes you don't know how it impacts you till you get older. And I think as you get older, you look at death differently because you're closer to it. I mean, none of us here are guaranteed tomorrow. So I believe that understanding, reading about the NDEs helps me because it gives you hope that makes it less scary, I guess, because you say, okay, it's reaffirmation, I think, to say, okay, I'm not, there's something beyond this flesh for us. I mean, so as you have kids and grandkids, you don't want to go because you want to be around for them and love them and cherish them all the time. So I think that's the most scariest thing. Then I read something once, and I haven't done this yet, so it's going to be my challenge also. But someone said, write your own eulogy. And it really, and it's not really what other people, it's you're writing it to see what other people think about you, but it's really more for self-reflection. So what you've spread back and given back to the world. So I haven't done it yet. So my challenge after this might be to do it for myself as well. But so that's my thought on death. It's going to happen. I think I don't know if any of us are ready. I mean, some of us might be, but I'm getting, I want to be prepared for it.
That's all that resonates with me, what you said as well. And before I make my comment, I just want to say, you see across the bottom of the screen, calling all beings the number 1 at Gmail. So if you want to be involved and you have a backstage pass with the cabbies, or you want to be on a members/viewers roundtable like this, it'll be something that looks like what you see here. We can have up to 10 on screen at once. So if you're interested in that, please email me for backstage pass or on screen. One will be live, one will not. And calling all beings 1 at Gmail. Now, I try to stay away from absolutes in life, because always, ever, never, every time, usually you'll find yourself having to back off from that. So generally speaking, I think about how flawed all of us are. And so I just try each day or each week or each month to somehow improve some aspect of my personality. And as we're flawed persons, sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. But I think if you're trying to do that, you're still living. When you quit trying to improve yourself in some manner, it's kind of, it's kind of time to go. But I'm going to think about, you know what? It'd be very interesting to read. I need to finish Michael's book because maybe I can look at death in a different way, just like Tim has. So thank you very much, Jules, for putting that up there. Growth mindset. Thank you. That a wave soul is Nathan. For those of you that are wondering who's a wave soul, that is Nathan. Maybe we can get him to throw that in there somehow, but that is Nathan. So Michael, last and certainly most importantly in this episode, how do you view death now, different than you did previous to writing this book?
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, it wasn't until later, I mean, after my 20s, it's probably in my early 30s where I started having less of a fear about death once I started, studying these near-death experiences. And then, I've come to view death as a transition now. I mean, you imagine yourself wearing a heavy wool coat, on a summer day. It weighs you down, and death is simply the moment you finally shrug that coat off. It's a release and to a lightness we've forgotten we possessed. I'm reminded of a quote that an NDEer said. The quote is, "Death is nothing more than the doorway to home." And I mean, that concept is kind of the heartbeat of my book. We spend our lives terrified of that door, locking it and bolting it, only to find that when it finally opens, the air on the other side is more real than the air we're breathing now. When you truly internalize that, it changes your DNA. You stop playing it safe. You stop obsessing over what your neighbors think or how many zeros are in your bank account. You realize that this entire world, what I call the construct, is just a temporary schoolhouse. We're here for a reason, to learn how to love unconditionally in a place that's actually difficult to do so. So, I mean, if you just take one thing away from this podcast and from my book, I hope it's this. You're so much more than the labels the world tries to stick on you. Most of us spend our lives defined by things like our jobs and, our race, our politics, our sexuality, our past mistakes. We let ourselves get boxed in, sometimes by these categories. And, that's not who you are, though. They're just costumes you're wearing in this play, of life. And the most important thing to remember is that you're not an actor following a set of lines. You have the free will to put down the script and start writing a new one whenever you're ready. And underneath all of that, you're an eternal being of light, and you existed long before you're born in this life, and you're going to keep right on existing long after you leave it. So we aren't just random accidents drifting through a chaotic universe. We're here on purpose, following a path we actually chose for ourselves before we even took our first breath. And you don't have to wait for your heart to stop this to start living beyond the construct. You can do it now. It starts by curiosity over judgment. When someone makes you angry, instead of reacting, you wonder what they're here to teach you. It means choosing authenticity over performance, stopping the act and just being who you're meant to be. The light isn't something for you waiting at the end of a long tunnel. It's sitting right here in your chest, waiting for you to notice it. So that's all I got to say. And I really appreciate you having me on tonight.
I love what you just said. If somebody had wanted to add on to that, you put it so perfectly and just gave us new things to think about, and it's exactly why we where we wanted to have you on. But yeah, if anybody, I don't want to cut anybody off. If anybody has closing comments, and then I want to get Tim and Michael to promo their books and social media and etc. But yeah, any closing thoughts? No? All right. Tim, if you would please promo what you got going on, Bigfoot Influencers. I think you were writing a second book, if I'm not mistaken. Let us know what's going down. And don't be on mute. I know, man. You guys in the mute button.
Well, I do that so you don't hear any. You never know what's going to happen in the background. I know. It's been quiet, so I want to make it about this book. Michael's book's great. I'm just thrilled. Again, I didn't know what I was getting into with it. So I've been on the show a few times. You guys can feel free if you want to learn about Bigfoot. Check my. It's pretty easy to find me on the socials with the Bigfoot Influencers. Book 2 still chugging along slowly. Maybe a book 3 on the way. Working on a documentary with Les Stroud. That's coming along. That'll probably be out in December before Christmas. I love being here with the group here. You guys are all amazing.
There we go. Yeah, Tim Halloran, the author of Bigfoot Influencers. Michael, we will have your stuff in the show notes. It's already here in the YouTube, and it'll also be in the show notes for the podcast. But yeah, what would you like to let people know about you, where they can find you, reach you, etc.?
Well, you can catch me on Facebook at Spectrum House Publishing. That's my independent publishing company. You can also catch me on Instagram, Blue Sky, on this Spectrum House Publishing. And you can get my book on Amazon. It's available on Amazon right now. I really appreciate you all, and thank you so much for your consideration. And I mean, it's not really about selling books, but it's more about getting that message across. So thank you.
Conveyed wonderfully. Tim, thank you for bringing us another guest. I don't know how many beers I owe you at this point. Namaste. And thank you, everybody, for just being so great to our guests. Now you know some of the other cabbies. Courtney there at the bottom of the screen. Deb's the snowflake avatar. Can you imagine? And Money Nathan up on the right hand of your screen. Mr. Michael Voshell, thank you very much, sir. And hopefully we will see you again on CAB.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
All right. On behalf of the panel, this is DJ saying, and for the mods and all of you that made the chat so wonderful and positive, and why I love being a cabbie so much is because of you guys. Without you guys, there's nothing. So thank you so much. Peace out.